In the far southwest of Scotland, in the quiet green folds of Dumfries and Galloway, lies a place where time has lain still for over 2.5 millennia. The Black Loch of Merton, a serene expanse fringed with reeds, holds within its depths a secret older than the written history of these isles. Here, beneath layers of dark, waterlogged soil, an entire Iron Age village has slept in silence. Across Britain, evidence of prehistoric homes is rare. Timber rots, thatch crumbles, what remains is often no more than faint shadows in the soil. But the Black Loch is different. Its peaty waters, rich in tannins, have created a natural tomb, sealing wooden walls, floors and crafted objects in an oxygen-starved embrace. This is Britain's own Pompeii of the wetlands. A frozen fragment of life from a time when iron was a newcomer to human hands, reshaping tools, weapons, and the balance of power. The village first revealed itself in 2016, when archaeologists began to peel back the layers of mud. What they found was breathtaking. The planks of houses as sharp and solid as the day they were cut, the stilted remains of roundhouses built over the shallows, and the preserved traces of lives long gone. By the 5th season of excavation, the archaeologists were no longer searching for the outlines of the village, they were stepping inside it. Their aim now was to uncover the personal possessions that could whisper the stories of the people who lived here. Within one circular dwelling, the earth gave way to something astonishing, an intact floor woven from rushes and reeds, its tight braiding still holding after 2,500 years. The matting, compacted layer upon layer, formed a warm and insulated surface, a prehistoric carpet, born of necessity and skill that had endured against the odds. It spoke of comfort in a harsh climate, of a people who understood both the land and the water that surrounded them. And then, lying hidden upon this floor, a crafted shape emerged, a small wooden object. Its surface, smoothed by a lathe, pierced through with a deliberate hole. To modern eyes, it seemed almost familiar, as though it could have been made yesterday. But it was ancient, its exact purpose now shrouded in mystery. Perhaps it had been part of a tool, perhaps an element of weaving equipment. Whatever its role, it bore the unmistakable touch of a skilled hand. In another part of the settlement, a refuse pit yielded a treasure unlike any seen before on this site: the fragments of a decorated yew-wood bowl. Turned on a lathe with precision rarely glimpsed in Iron Age Britain, its rim carried delicate incised patterns, not merely functional, but beautiful. Such craftsmanship hinted at artisans who were not only competent woodworkers, but masters in their field. Together, these finds, the woven floor, the spindle-turned mystery piece, and the exquisite yew bowl, transformed the Black Loch from a place of academic interest into a vivid portrait of life. Here was a community of ingenuity and artistry. People who, in the damp heart of a Scottish wetland, built warm homes, fashioned fine objects, and lived in close connection with their environment. The Black Loch of Merton is more than a site. It is a window into a moment in time, a moment that might otherwise have been lost forever to the decay of centuries. And in its waterlogged silence, it reminds us that the story of Britain's past is not written only in stone, but in wood, in rush, in the delicate weave of human hands. The Lost Spitfire, a hero's final flight in the frozen mountains of Norway, high above the fjords, where winter mists cling to the slopes, lies the wreckage of a mission both daring and doomed. It was March 5, 1942, and the war in Europe had reached a fever pitch. In the skies above Scotland, a single Spitfire prepared for takeoff. Its pilot was Flight Lieutenant Alistair Gunn, a man entrusted with a task personally ordered by Winston Churchill. His target was the Picts, the pride of the German Navy, a battleship so powerful it threatened the lifeline of the Allied convoys crossing the Arctic seas. Gunn's mission was not to fight, but to see. Flying an unarmed, stripped-down reconnaissance Spitfire painted the pale blue of the northern sky. He was to photograph the Picts in its Norwegian lair. The images could shape the course of the war, but somewhere over the snowbound mountains near Trondheim Fjord, the mission faltered. German fighters found him. Gunfire tore through the air. The Spitfire, crippled, spiraled down into the high ridges. Gunn survived the crash, but his war would take a darker turn. For decades, The wreck lay hidden among the stones and heather, battered by storms and silent winters. Only the whispers of locals, the fading lines of German combat reports, and the memories of old stories kept its location alive. 76 years later, aircraft engineer and historian Tony Hoskins set out to find it. His team of volunteers, part historians, part mountaineers, faced a 3-kilometer climb through treacherous terrain. Somewhere ahead, in a field of snow and rock, lay the remains of one of the earliest reconnaissance Spitfires ever built. The search was grueling, but then, a glint of metal. A fragment here, another there. Soon the mountain began to yield its secrets. The radiator door, still showing traces of its original paint. Shards of the Perspex canopy through which Gunn had scanned the skies. The oxygen canisters that had kept him alive at altitude. And then, the most haunting find of all. The cockpit's blind flying panel, its dials and gauges still intact. These were the very instruments Gunn had read in the final moments before the crash. Among the twisted pieces of fuselage was a silent witness to violence, a bullet hole, punched clean through the metal beside where Gunn had sat. It was the war, frozen in a single mark. Gunn's story did not end on the mountain. Captured after parachuting to safety, he was taken to the infamous Stalag Luft 3, the prison camp that would later become immortalized in The Great Escape. Gunn was part of the escape committee, tunneling under the wire in the hope of freedom. He made it out. But he was caught again, just 25 kilometers from liberty. In March 1944, he was executed by the Gestapo, one of 50 Allied airmen killed in the aftermath of the escape. The recovery of his Spitfire was more than an archaeological triumph. It was an act of remembrance. Each fragment, each rivet, each scratched and weathered panel told the story of a man who flew into danger without hesitation. A man whose courage lived on in the very airframe that bore him into history. On that mountainside in Norway, the Spitfire is no longer just a wreck. It is a memorial not of defeat, but of sacrifice, endurance, and the quiet bravery that often goes uncelebrated. Vindolanda, life on the Roman frontier on the wind-lashed hills of northern Britain, where rain sweeps in from the North Sea and mist curls over the valleys. A stone wall once marked the edge of an empire. Hadrian's Wall, the northernmost boundary of Rome's vast dominion, stood not only as a barrier against the tribes beyond, but as a living frontier. Just south of its path lay Vindolanda, a Roman fort that guarded this wild borderland for nearly 3 centuries. Here, soldiers drilled in the chill dawn. Merchants traded in the muddy streets, and families, wives, children, servants, carved out their lives under the shadow of war. But Vindolanda was no ordinary garrison. Beneath its ramparts, sealed in layers of oxygen-starved clay, the past has been preserved with uncanny clarity. Leather sandals, wooden writing tablets, even the personal letters of soldiers longing for home. This year, archaeologists are digging into one of the fort's most turbulent chapters, the late 2nd century, a time of rebellion, civil unrest, and political intrigue within Rome itself. Their focus is the fort's defensive ditches, deep trenches that once bristled with sharpened stakes. The soil here is heavy, wet, and dark, but that is precisely why it holds its secrets so well. Almost immediately, the earth begins to yield its treasures. A single Roman shoe emerges, perfectly intact, its stitching still visible after nearly 2,000 years. Soon, more follow. From the sturdy boots of soldiers to the delicate shoes of children who once played within the fort's walls, each shoe is a human footprint across time. Each must be saved quickly, for once exposed, the leather begins to fade and crumble. At the conservation lab, Barbara Burley and her team work with quiet precision, washing the mud away with cold water, sealing each piece in a protective chemical bath. It is painstaking work, but without it, these fragile links to the past would vanish in days. The shoes are just the beginning. As the dig deepens, a pattern emerges. Almost half the footwear belongs not to soldiers, but to women and children. Vindolanda, it seems, was not just a place of war, but of domestic life. Homes, markets, small gardens behind barrack walls. Yet it was also a brutal world. Archaeological evidence hints at executions carried out within sight of the fort's gates, with severed heads mounted on poles as grim warnings. In the shadow of Rome's northern wall, the line between safety and danger was razor-thin. Families lived alongside soldiers who could be called to battle at any moment. Children played in courtyards where the echoes of marching boots and shouted orders never stopped. The excavation at Vindolanda offers more than artifacts. It offers a glimpse into the human reality of the frontier, the resilience of those who made their lives here, the bonds they formed, and the ever-present shadow of the Empire's enemies. As the sun dips low over the Northumberland hills, the fort's outlines take shape in the fading light. You can almost hear the clatter of armor, the creak of wooden gates, and the murmur of voices. Roman, Brittonic, countless others, blending into the wind. Scremby, uncovering Anglo-Saxon lives across the gentle, rolling hills of the Lincolnshire wolds. The earth hides a cemetery untouched for 15 centuries. Here, in a quiet field near the village of Scremby, time has sealed away the stories of an age long shrouded in mystery. The early medieval period, once known as the Dark Ages, in truth, was anything but dark. This was a time of migrations and mingled cultures, of kingdoms rising from the ashes of Rome's collapse. Across the North Sea came the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, bringing with them new languages, new beliefs, and new ways of life. And here in Lincolnshire, they buried their dead with treasures that still speak across the centuries. The story began with a faint signal, the soft chime of a metal detector in the hands of local enthusiast Jim Hoff. Beneath his feet lay the first glimmer of a find, fragments of jewelry, beads, and ancient metalwork. What followed was beyond even an archaeologist's dream, led by Hugh Wilmot of the University of Sheffield. A full excavation revealed a sprawling Anglo-Saxon cemetery. Graves lined with spearheads, shields, ornate brooches, and fine beads of amber and glass. Some burials were humble, others almost regal. In one grave, a woman rested with an ivory ring, the delicate frame of a bag she once wore at her side. Nearby, another woman lay with her child, both adorned with almost 500 beads of Baltic amber, each one polished to a warm, honeyed glow. These were not mere ornaments, were symbols of wealth and identity, proof of connections stretching far beyond Britain to the icy shores of the Baltic and the markets of distant lands. The questions came quickly. Who were these people? Were they descendants of local Britons, or newcomers from across the sea? And how did they come to possess treasures from Africa, India, and beyond? Science provided answers. Analysis of teeth from one richly adorned woman revealed she had not grown up here in Lincolnshire, or even across the North Sea. Her isotopic signature traced back to England's south coast, perhaps Kent or Sussex. She had traveled north as a young girl, bringing her customs, her dress, and her heritage into this new land. Each grave here is a biography written in soil and stone, telling of warriors, mothers, craftsmen, and traders who lived in a world far more connected than history once believed. Even in the so-called Dark Ages, Britain was a crossroads of cultures, its people part of a vast web of trade and migration. Standing in the open field, with the wolds stretching to the horizon, you can almost see them, the women in their beadwork finery, the warriors with their spears, the children running between the wooden halls. The past feels close enough to touch, browse and island through time. Far to the north, beyond Scotland's rugged mainland, the Orkney archipelago rises from the grey waters of the Atlantic. Among its scattered isles lies Rouse, a place so rich in ancient sites. It's earned the name the Egypt of the North. Here, time is not a straight line, but a circle, one age built upon another, each leaving its mark on the same sacred ground. For thousands of years, Rouse's cliffs and bays have guarded the remains of its people. The sea has been both protector and destroyer, preserving what lies buried while steadily gnawing away at the land. In 2010, after a fierce storm tore at the coastline, a line of stones emerged from the sand. What they hinted at was extraordinary. The roof of a Neolithic tomb, untouched for over 4 millennia. Today, archaeologists Steve Dockrell and Julie Bond work against the relentless tide. They know the sea will claim this place. Their task is to record and understand it before it vanishes forever. As they lift heavy slabs of stone, the architecture of the tomb comes into view. the skill of its builders plain in every joint and seam. But Rouse has another surprise. Above the ancient burial chamber, they find the curved walls of an Iron Age roundhouse, built nearly 2,000 years later. Why here? Perhaps for convenience, reusing the stone of an older monument, or perhaps for meaning, a deliberate act to claim the power of an ancestral site, tying the living to the memory of the dead. And still, the layers continue. On the same site, from the centuries we call the early medieval period, the team uncovers the remains of a Pictish blacksmith's workshop. Scattered across its floor are the tools of his trade: anvil stones, fragments of copper, and astonishingly faint, greasy fingerprints pressed into the stone itself. The marks of a craftsman, frozen in time. Beyond this shoreline dig, the island's story stretches into the Viking Age. In the National Museum of Scotland rests the Westness brooch. It's discovered in a burial on Rouse, a gleaming masterpiece of gold filigree and intricate design. It belonged to a Viking woman, whose teeth reveal she was not local. Her journey to Rouse mirrors the island's own, shaped by winds, tides, and the meeting of many worlds. Rouse is not one history, but many. A living archive where the Neolithic, the Iron Age, the Pictish, and the Viking all converge. On this small, wind-battered island, we see the truth of human history, that the past is never truly buried, only waiting for its next chapter to be uncovered. Salford. The Industrial Revolution's dark side in the 19th century, the skyline of Salford bristled with chimneys. Its smoke poured from factories day and night, a sign that Britain had become the workshop of the world. But behind this triumph of industry lay another story, one of crushing poverty, overcrowded slums, and the iron discipline of the prison walls. On the banks of the River Irwell stood New Bailey Prison, the largest in England when it opened in the Georgian era. It could hold more than 700 inmates, its high brick walls casting a long shadow over the city. Here, the Industrial Revolution, as hunger for order and reform, collided with the grim reality of crime and punishment. Today, archaeologists dig where the prison once stood, uncovering foundations that haven't seen the light in nearly 2 centuries. Among the brickwork and rubble, they find something unexpected: a heating system. In an age when most of Salford's poor shivered in cold, damp rooms, prisoners here had warmth. Beneath the prison yard, the team reveals the boiler house and flues that once carried heat to the cell blocks. It hints at a philosophy taking hold in the 1820s, that punishment could be paired with reform, that a prisoner might be improved rather than simply broken. But life inside was still brutally hard. Records show inmates walking the treadmill for hours each day, climbing the equivalent of 2/3 of Mount Everest, all for no purpose other than discipline. Cells measured just 2 meters square, yet often held 3 people. Men, women, and even children as young as 9 were incarcerated here, most for petty theft, vagrancy, or simply being unable to pay a fine. For some women, release from New Bailey brought only despair. Outside its gates lay streets of grinding poverty, where survival was harder than prison life, and many returned within weeks. As archaeologists piece together the prison's story, they uncover a paradox. New Bailey was a place of control and confinement, yet also a symbol of a society beginning to question how it dealt with those who broke its laws. In the bricks, pipes, and cell walls, we glimpse an era struggling to reconcile justice with humanity, and a reminder that progress often comes in uneasy steps.